research. I thought, it's impossible. You can't possibly take the kinds of students that we have at Cal State Long Beach and expect them to be able to do this. At the previous institution where I was teaching, everyone had dumbed it down, particularly after coming out of IHUM and dealing with Stanford students, which they're so easy to deal with, really, compared to the students that at least I have at Cal State Long Beach. It was a shock. It was a shock. But what we've done at Cal State Long Beach, I think, is we've maintained these high standards, and we've imposed a sort of discipline on all the people that teach these core courses to really follow through and not give in to this tendency to dumb it down, to reduce the reading list, to reduce the expectations for papers, and so forth and so on. All right. That said, the challenges. The challenges stem both from the economics that, economic reality of our situation today in California, but also throughout the country. And also just the kinds of students we have at Cal State Long Beach, very similar, I imagine, to San Jose State and all the other 23 campuses of the Cal State system. Ours is the largest campus in the Cal State system. We've got nearly 40,000 students. We are called a minority-majority campus, so minorities are a majority on the campus. Many of them are first-generation students. They don't grow up in families where reading is something that is habitual. They don't have conversations around the dinner table, as I did when I was growing up, about the affairs of the world and books that we had read. Those are just not things that they do. They're not things that they do. They don't do much writing anymore in high school, and certainly not the kind of writing that I expect of them. Being able to craft an argumentative essay using evidence, all the sorts of things that we tried to teach people to do in IHUM. Then we've got the budget situation. Our budget has been cut 20%. So 20% of our budget is cut. So our budget is 20% less than last year. And last year's budget was, I think, about 20% less than the year before. So to give you a sense of what that means day to day, there is no paper anymore. I can't print out paper syllabi. I have no copy budget. For exams, I can't print out exams. The students get the exams right before the exams. I send it out to them, attach it to an email to all the students. They print it out, and then they come to class with the exam. So that's the situation that we have at Cal. I have zero copy budget for my own research or teaching purposes. No copy budget, none at all. And the classrooms are falling apart. The technology doesn't work. If it's broken, it doesn't get fixed, and so forth and so on. So these are the kinds of irritating daily realities that we have to deal with. In addition, the students are hurting because not only are they getting much less quality of the infrastructure is decaying, the class sizes are going up, but they have to pay more for it. They have to pay more for it. And as a result, they have to work more. In many cases, 20 to 40 hours. Most of my students work at least 20 hours a week at some job, flipping burgers or whatever. And many of them work full-time. Some of them are married and have kids. So there are all these challenges. And that means they have less time to devote toward the classwork, to do the readings. So maintaining these high expectations given this economic climate is extremely, extremely difficult. And it's getting worse. And it ain't going to get better anytime soon. Anytime soon. Next year is going to be worse than this year in the CSU system. That's what everyone keeps telling us. And then they're saying, get used to the way it is now. This is the new normal. This is the new normal. It's never going to go back to the halcyon days of 2006. So I got a sense of that. I taught 301, which is the sort of the first time students get a chance to do research for the first time last year. One of the problems with our core courses is that we couldn't get any of the tenure and tenure track faculty to teach them. We gave them all to lecturers. But now that they've fired most of the lecturers, we have no choice but to have to teach these things, which is a good thing. It is as it should be. That's one of the reasons I think that the system's beginning to work a little bit better now. Not that lecturers are not competent, but it's just that all the tenure track people should be involved in all the core courses, which are, after all, the foundation of the major, the history department major. So I taught 301. I had 15 students. Of those 15, 7 dropped. They just couldn't do it. They would have failed if they had continued taking it. That's typical. It's typical. We cap these at 15, and we usually get that kind of attrition rate. Of the, so 7 dropped. Of the 8 who remained, it was a constant struggle, correcting papers, remedial work, basic grammar stuff. I couldn't really focus on the content of their papers because of these remedial issues. It was such a challenge. I do a little exercise where I ask the students to talk about, what they remember from 10 years ago, something they did 10 years ago, something from a year ago, and then something from yesterday. And the stories blew me away. The hardships, the challenges these students face. In that one particular class, I had a very bright woman from Mexico. She came to the United States when she was 11 years old, did not speak a lick of English until she came to the United States. Incredibly ambitious, very outgoing, very well spoken, but her writing is atrocious, absolutely atrocious, really almost impossible to read. So that was one student. Another student covered with tattoos and earrings and nose rings and all that kind of stuff. He was brought up in foster homes. His parents had died when he was young. His brother who took care of him was murdered. He went to community college, and despite everything, managed to get out of community college and transfer into Cal State Long Beach, which for him was a dream come true. Again, so many remedial issues. The writing was just atrocious. Lots of interesting ideas, but the complete inability to express those ideas in any coherent way on a piece of paper, much less figure out how to analyze evidence and put together an argument and support it and all that kind of stuff. Another student from Vietnam, first generation college student, she had lymphoma and went through chemotherapy, had a heart attack, and nearly died 2 years previously. Now she had gone through those first rounds, those rounds of chemo, and the lymphoma is in remission. She's back in my class. And as you can appreciate, the chemo seriously degraded her ability to concentrate for long periods of time. And to be able to do the sorts of things you have to do to put together a paper, make an argument, collect evidence, and so on and so forth. It's just, these are the kinds of realities. These are the students that I have to deal with, and yet we have these very, very high expectations. The other challenge associated with this, with the writing issue, is that we are not well serviced, not to condemn the people who do English in the audience here, but we are not well serviced by the English composition courses that are supposed to teach people how to do writing. They don't really focus on the genre of writing that we expect within the history department. What they focus on instead is having students pass something called the whoopee. The whoopee. Do any of you know the whoopee? Whoopee, yeah. Writing proficiency exam, but we just use the shorthand whoopee. That's what we call it. Every student at Cal State Long Beach has to pass the whoopee in order to graduate. It's a basic, sort of displays a basic proficiency in writing. It's a timed 75-minute writing exercise. And so what the English classes do, the English 101 classes, is they basically teach kids how to pass the whoopee. Not how to write the kinds of papers that we expect in history, but how to pass the whoopee. And if you go to the Writing Resource Center, that's what they're geared toward as well. So I send students to that Writing Resource Center, and they learn how to pass the whoopee, but they don't learn anything about how to write the kinds of papers that I expect. So this is a huge challenge. What we did, miraculously, I don't know how my chair managed this. This year she she managed to find money to create a new system of 5 TAs who are, not TAs, but writing tutors, who were chosen from among our best master's students. And they have office hours every week. And they provide writing assistance specifically for history majors, and only for history majors. And by the way, what started happening is that the Writing Center began sending people to our classes and saying that they were asked to come to our classes and talk about what the Writing Center will do for those students. So they got wind of this program, and they're going to try to kill it. They're going to try to kill it. Any rate, we just started this. And so there are 3 things that these students do in this, when they go to one of these tutors. We have a thesis writing exercise. There's a worksheet associated with this. So all students who write their history papers have to go and go through this worksheet and then bring it back to me or any other person in the history department and show that yeah, I went through this history thesis writing workshop. The other thing that they have to do is then have these tutors read the rough drafts, and then there's a worksheet on how you assess these rough drafts and all the problems and so forth and so on. And then there's a final worksheet and exercise, spit and polish, after you do the, when you're writing the final draft. So that's the system we've set up. I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm really excited about that. One last thing. I don't want to go on too long here. There was an interesting article in the, and maybe we can talk about this. I don't know the answer. Why is it that students, their writing skills have declined? There are a lot of different explanations for that. I'd like to hear your view on that. But there's clear evidence that that's happening. I have a sense of that just in thinking about students writing over the past 10 years or so that I've been in the classroom. But even if you look at scores on SATs, this was in the New York Times yesterday, I believe, and it says that average scores in the SAT fell across the nation this year, with the reading score for the high school class of 2011 falling 3 points to 497, the lowest on record. So they're not reading, no surprise, right? So it's fallen to the lowest on record. The average writing score dropped 2 points to 489. Scores, and you know the SAT now has a new component, not just the way we used to do it, but they have a writing component to it as well. Since that was introduced 6 years ago, every single year the scores and the writing component have gone down. Every single year since that new part of the SAT was introduced. Some guy named Robert Schaefer, public education director, something called Fair Test, a nonprofit political group, he says he blames it on standardized testing, no child left behind. I don't know. Maybe that's the answer, maybe not. Perhaps we can have a discussion on that particular issue. At any rate, thank you for your time.
All right, well, I'm going to be expanding or really drawing on a lot of the issues that Andrew has already raised. As you can see here, my focus is on making humanities relevant to first-generation college students. And I just want to make sure we're on the same page because that's a term that I wasn't particularly familiar with until relatively recently, till really coming to San Jose State. That first generation means the first generation in their families to attend a four-year university. And it's ironic because I myself was a first-generation student without even knowing that I was. And my comments are going to be about Mexican-American students in particular, although a lot of what I say I think applies more broadly to first-generation students of any ethnicity. And I'm going to be sharing some facts and figures today. Sometimes these facts and figures are particular to Chicano or Mexican-American students. Sometimes they apply to Latino students more broadly. So I'm from the humanities, and I like to play fast and loose with numbers because I'm a literary person. So you have to bear with me. Okay, so I arrived at San Jose State fresh from teaching 3 years of IHUM, where we have our 15 students per section, and it was an experience, a teaching experience that was very close to my own educational upbringing. I was an undergrad at University of Chicago, where my classes were all pretty much that size, and then I did my PhD here at Stanford, and of course, graduate courses are very small. So all of a sudden, I find myself at a large state school teaching. One of my teaching assignments was a Mexican-American history course. It's a year-long general education, team-taught course. In the fall, we go from Aztec times to the Civil War. So it's only like 10,000 years of history in 16 weeks. And in the first year I taught it, it had an enrollment upwards of 80 students. Some sections enrolled 100 or more at a time. So I faced two particular challenges. Number one, how am I going to learn any of these students' names when I'm looking out at this sea of faces? And two, how can I make this class feel smaller, more intimate, help my students know that I notice when they're there or not? Because even with that many students, you do. So I took one of my favorite first day of IHUM activities, which was speed dating, where you have students